everyone. Welcome to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I'm the Advertising and Marketing Manager for HGA, and I'll be your guest today. Today, we are sponsored by the Michigan League of Handweavers, and go see all of their incredible offerings they have at MLH Guild. That's Michigan League Guild .org, MLHguild.org. Sorry, guys, I've just messed up your email there. We will have questions today. We will take those toward the end of the hour. And as always, if you would please put your questions in the Q&A and not in the chat. Love your comments in the chat, but I can't hardly see the questions. It's easier to much easier to see them in the question. So today we have Jenny Schu. Jenny has been beading for over 25 years and weaving for 18. She obtained a BFA, a Bachelors in Fine Arts, and with a concentration in fiber arts and a minor in art history from the University of Michigan. Her beaded jewelry has been in numerous galleries. Currently, she's showing at the Lansing, Michigan, the Calumet, Michigan, Grand Rapids, and Petoskey, Traverse City, Michigan. I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. She's exhibited nationally. As a matter of fact, she's been in HGA's Small Expressions. That's when I first became aware of her work. She's been awarded grants, and she's received numerous Michigan League of Handweavers exhibits over the years. Welcome, Jenny. It's great to have you here.
Hi, good to be here.
Good. It's glad to have you. Our first question is always about, what is your favorite tea?
I'm not a tea drinker. So about 3 or 4 o'clock in the days, like my days off, I switched to Dr. Pepper. So
there you go.
In my mug.
Well, how did you get started in fiber?
That's a long question because I have been interested in sewing, knitting, anything to do with needle and thread since I was a little kid. So I would blame my mom first, and she was a member of the Ann Arbor Quilters Guild when I was really little, and she had me quilting at 6. And then I asked somebody when I was in the 3rd grade from church to teach me how to knit, and I picked up beads in the 4th grade. And it was kind of just done from there. My mom joined the Black Sheep Weavers Guild in Michigan, in Heartland, Michigan, when I was in middle school, I think, maybe as early as elementary school. And so I tagged along the meetings until I actually joined in high school. So I got an early start, and I was just going to go to business school for college, and I had like a dozen weaver moms going, "You should go to art school for fiber art." And I said, "You could do that." So I thankfully had that bump from that knowing that there was a fiber community and what it was throughout my life. And then we finally got a good art teacher my senior year of high school who took a bunch of us to a portfolio day, and I was accepted to the University of Michigan through my portfolio, but they kept on sending me letters to apply. So I decided to apply, not thinking I could get in anyway, and I did. So it's been quite the wild ride from there. But I knew first thing I got into college, I wanted to learn double weave pickup. I had seen it, I didn't know how to do it. Like I went in knowing this is what I want to do. So I'm very grateful for that. It's been part of my life. I always thought I'd drop the beadwork, and that just kept going too. I'm attracted to both. So.
Well, boy, you jumped off in the deep end then. If you wanted to do double weave pickup, that's pretty complicated for anybody.
Weave structure has always intrigued me and made a lot of sense to me. So yeah, if they could have taught that in math class growing up, then it would have, like, algebra would have been so much easier for me if they were discussing, weave structure.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, do you see yourself as an artist, as an artisan, or a craftsman?
I see myself as an artist. I I went into college with the idea of being more of a craftsman and wanting to do art fairs and making wearables to sell. And my college professor was Sherry Smith, and she really, really drilled into me that you don't spend this long creating something just to wear it and wash it and, for functional purposes. You're creating artwork. And I was not a good artist in college, actually. It took me a long time to develop my voice as like to be able to put my emotions into my work. I really went to college to learn as much technique as I possibly could. Like I packed everything I could into that 4 years. I even had a weaving loom in one of my dorms and that I asked if I could borrow it. I had multiple weavings going at the same time. I was obsessed. So I think I've become an artist over time with that in mind. But even my professor, who she told me I wasn't a good artist leaving college, and that I knew a lot of technique, and that I could teach in a third world country to help out Peace Corps style kind of thing. And it wasn't really up my alley. And actually, she asked me to show in her retirement show a couple of years ago. And so, and I'm now part of a small group that's a bunch of professors in the area, just like 6 of us that get together and do critiques. So I got there eventually, but young me was just very wide-eyed and just trying to take everything in.
Well, good for you. I mean, that could have really knocked some people completely off track and they would have just given up art. So good for you. I think that's amazing.
I'm not I had a boss once that told me I wasn't a pessimist, I'm a realist. I don't expect really high expectations. I'm just like, I'm just gonna do my thing and see what happens, So my brother and I are both not very competitive people, and we're both very successful with what we love to do by not being competitive.
I like that. I like that. That's a great attitude. Well, when I ask about this piece that's coming up, it says, "Leave me alone." And you said that you had to live with this piece for a while before you can make it. And I love how you put this. You said that you talked about a low hum that you had going on, trying to think about this piece before you can make all the decisions about it. Can you talk some about the low hum and also just about this work?
Yeah. So that low hum is always going on. And that's, I think, part of what does make me an artist. Like artwork comes even before a lot of other things in my life. So it's always kind of in the background. When I have a day job and it's at Home Depot now, and I love it because I'm helping other people figure out their projects, and I'll be in the middle of a discussion about something about doors and go, oh my gosh, that's what I need to do with this piece. Like, and just scribble it down on a note to remind myself real quick. So that low hum is like, I've always got these ideas of pieces in the back of my head, and they need to work themselves out. This particular piece, Leave Me Alone, this is the large version. I tried to do some smaller pieces, and Cameron Taylor Brown was actually jurying, and I was scribing for her when she saw the smaller pieces, and she said they're kind of like maquettes for a bigger thing, and I was like, yep, that's exactly what they are. So I kind of, the smaller ones, one's the flat one and one goes on an angle. Yep. And I knew I wanted this to be a sister piece to the piece that's called She Can't See the Forest of the Trees. It has the leaf panel in front of it, and then 2 other panels. And I really like integrating my weaving in with my beadwork because it's really the 2 most important things in my fiber work for me.
So it looks like you kind of drew it out first and then you did one part.
Yeah, so I do the leaves all the time. I just have pictures of them. So I initially thought that I would do a full panel that matched up with the word panel
Mhm.
of the leaves. And as I was thinking about it and doodling, and the original, she can't see the forest of the trees piece has a hat, like a partial panel up top.
Mhm.
I thought this is going to look way better if I don't cover the entire weaving portion, if I still let it show a lot. So the previous photo that you showed was me kind of pinning it up and seeing how wide I want that as I'm building the leaf panel. How wide do I want it to end up being? So, and how long? So I decided I wanted the full length of that that weaving too. So I'm in the processes of, I just hemmed the weaving and I'm putting on a beaded edging for it. And then I'll hang the piece in front of it to make sure they complement each other. And that's really, it's about eyeing it and complimenting, seeing what's complementary. And yeah, that the bottom corner of that sketchbook piece is actually something I sketched out at work. And I know that because it's taped in there on from a smaller piece of paper. I pull notes and sketches out of my pockets at the end of the day, and some of them end up in the sketchbook. So
Now, these leaves are beaded, correct?
the leaves on the right-hand side are a multitude of things.
Okay.
So there are beaded leaves in there, and then I'm also going through my fabric stash, and I've got some hand-dyed fabric and just some sheer black fabric that are stitched on the sewing machine into leaves.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also, I knit my thrums. So there's thrums from the woven piece that are the same blue and green that are knitted into striped and then created into leaves on the sewing machine too.
I love how you just use up everything you have, right?
I save everything and I use everything.
Yeah, yeah.
But it creates so much more texture when you use all the different fiber techniques. And I love texture and giving it, you need to have a closer look. You know, the piece stands on its own from far away, but when you get closer, you see so much more of it.
I know that's my reaction now. It's like, oh, I wish I could actually see it and see what it looks like. One of your YouTube videos is titled, and I hope I get this right, is there a thing to which brings us less joy, yet we devote more time? Now, I thought you were referring to warping because it was next to or near a warping video that you had on board, but you're saying that's not true. For me, that could be true. Warping is not my best thing, but so what brings you joy? Where does your joy come from?
Oh gosh, these days everywhere. To specify about the title for that YouTube video, that's actually the title of the piece that's on my loom right now. And like we had talked about, the quote is from Prairie Home Companion from Chris Seeley, and he's talking about social media and Twitter. So the piece that I'm working on right now is a social media piece, but that it's also a reminder for me to not devote time on things that don't bring me joy, which is spending too much time on the internet and Facebook and stuff is really, really a drain on my creativity. I'm finding so much joy. So I was on lockdown with COVID for 2 weeks, quarantined with my now fiance, and the first week we slept the whole time. The second week I had all this time where it was nobody else's. I couldn't make plans. I couldn't go do anything. And I loved it. All of this other creative stuff started bubbling up, and I was so motivated. And a lot of my joy comes in anything I can do with fiber work, but it's also building and structural things. And that's why I love my job at Home Depot. Like I'm teaching people how to install doors and windows, and I'm doing it myself now. And I love the process of putting things together and building it and problem solving for it, which is actually leading into one of the talk that I'm giving at Convergence Conference this summer is about finishing and hanging your pieces. And so the different thought process of like, oh, I could do this for this piece. And that's also back to the low hum. A lot of my pieces, I want them hanging off the wall. I want them to be able to be seen from both sides and light passing through. So I've I've put up a lot of exhibits over the years for different things. And when artists give you stuff that isn't hangable or isn't, you can't just stick it on the wall, they need to have an idea of what they want, or they're going to, whatever the exhibit's whim is what it's going to look like. So it's such an important part of being an artist, I think, is the whole finished process and what you want it to look like at the end and how it can hang is really, really important. So when I have something on the loom, I start thinking about how I want it to hang and what the finished work is going to be on it.
Well, you have my admiration about installing windows and doors, because we've been remodeling a house, so you have my complete admiration. That
I've been re-roofing my garage too.
I mean, it's just a fearlessness you have, because I don't even attempt some of that stuff because I'm so afraid of what disaster I'm going to create. So good on you, that you're willing to just give it a shot.
Back to like where I started with fiber work, I grew up on a hobby farm. My dad had a full wood shop and was renovating an old house with my mom. And, my mom could draw anything and my dad could build anything three-dimensionally. And he'd just be like, come here, Jennifer, let me show you how to do this. And I just, I watched him tinker and play, and that thought process of how to put stuff together and just the things he'd build just with whatever was laying around. So that's how I work, I guess. And I'm not afraid to, like, with re-roofing my garage, I'm like, I can't make it any worse. It's rotting through. There's big holes in my garage. I can't make it worse.
I have to keep that in mind. Well, you have such a wonderful use of color. And these two pieces I chose just because they're so beautiful. And I was curious because when I think about color, like in beads, there's it's a hard material, but it can have a certain translucent effect, right? Mm-hmm. And then yarn is much softer, but it's more opaque. So I was wondering, how does working with color and fiber versus beading work for you?
I don't really differentiate the two, I guess. Uh-huh. I could give a whole day long lecture on color and texture you can build with beads because they come in so many different finishes, and like you said, translucency, but translucent with the color in the middle of the bead gives them different depth. And I feel like I can create the same with fabric and with thread and yarn. I have, for whatever reason, my entire life, I've been attracted to sheer fabric, like any clothing that has shears on it. I had to buy this turtleneck from White House Black Market last year that was a sheer olive green that you just wear a cami underneath it. I've always loved that translucency and light passing through fabric, and beads give that in certain ways. But then a lot of my weavings, actually, I weave a little bit more open than the traditional weaver would, because I'm not using it for functionality. It's for artwork to be hung on the wall. It's not going to be washed. So you can see a little bit of light passing through most of my work. And actually that leaf piece that was up on the left-hand side, you see a really wide open woven leaf in one of those where, I'm weaving really open. And that's something I worked on in college too. I wanted to weave more open, almost a netting or translucency. And my professor taught me just, not as many ends per inch, when you're drafting your warps. And what I found with one of my pieces, I don't know if you had that up there, it's got the hands, it's silver and black. That was a college piece. When it's hanging with light around it, it just looks like a piece of fabric. You can't see the pattern in it, which is really fun too. And it's a double weave, so.
Oh, okay, right, double weave. you talked some about this previously, but I want to kind of go back to this, that you sometimes incorporate your beading, you often incorporate your beading into your weaving. And this work that you mentioned earlier, that she can't see the forest through the trees, is a wonderful example of using beads. And not to be insulting, but like when I use beads, I use it to give the scarf a little bling or something. But you take it way beyond that. I mean, this isn't just to add some detail. So would you talk about how you came up with this great combination and talk more about this piece? It's just amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, so again, so for a couple of years I had this low hum. I hadn't been doing artwork level work. I had just been kind of flunking along, making jewelry and getting into galleries and stuff. And there's an the Lansing, the Greater Lansing, or Arts Council of Greater Lansing, Art before Lansing, does this grant for artists, and it was it's a big deal, or it was, and it was $1,000 grant, and you applied for it, and you had to have, you know, this idea that you wanted to work off of, and that was really getting that grant was my jumping off point to have a deadline for these ideas that I'd had in my head, but I hadn't been producing. So the Forest of the Trees piece, the double weave pickup at the back that says forest, red front and back, it's flipped back and forth, was the first double weave I had done in a long time. And sometimes it's a little nerve-wracking to get back into that, because it's not it's a little bit of a complex weave, figuring out what to pick up when. And so I had just had this idea of how am I going to integrate my beads, and I was already making a lot of beaded leaves, and I wanted more than just all beaded leaves, because otherwise it would just look like jewelry, not an art piece, and it wouldn't speak to the woven piece behind it. The center piece, you can see the strips of beads, which is a St. Petersburg chain stitch that I use on a lot of my necklaces. I thought I would weave them in and out, and it wasn't hanging right. And I wanted it to kind of be representative of trees with the leaves up top. I'm not a fan of that panel, which is kind of why the second sister piece isn't trying to fight with 3 panels. It's just got the 2. But at the end of the day, I'm like, no, this is where I wanted it to go. I'm committing. And it's still, I've grown to appreciate that middle panel with the beaded strips. But is it necessary? And I think actually it is necessary, because you have to keep looking and digging further into the forest of the trees of the piece. But yeah, so, and then you can't really see it in here, but I do a beaded edge like that center piece, because my salvages are terrible for you weavers. I do 2 passes of my weft when I've got my pattern picked up to make it go along a little faster. And I just cannot get my salvages to look nice the way I'm weaving it. The last critique I had with that group with my professor, Sherry, said, there's gotta be a better, just work on your salvages. There's gotta be a better way than doing this hours of beadwork to attach to the sides. But I gotta say, I've fallen in love with the weight that the beads give the weaving. It hangs with a little more robustness. It's not as flimsy as if it didn't have that, glass beaded edge. So I just keep doing it. The leaf panel right now, or the Leave Me Alone piece, I'm currently sewing the beaded edge on. And at the end of the day, I'm beading all the time. Like, that's what I do at night when I come home from work. We eat dinner, we sit in front of the TV, and I do my beadwork. And it doesn't seem to take me as long as it used to bead those, even though it probably takes me hours. They're hundreds of hours, but but it's part of my process, it's part of the piece. And I think it's become an important part, even though at the time, my solution, if it's got a mistake in it, is to cover it with beads. Like beads are always pretty and sparkly, and I know what to do with them. When I've got an issue, cover it with beads. So that's where my salt
Admire
is.
your honesty. I mean, there are so many people listening going, yeah, those selvages, they're awful. I hate those. I love that. But we'll all pretend you didn't tell us that, and we'll just say that was the original design.
I think it's important to know that it's not perfect all the time.
That's funny.
Just embracing that imperfection is really important.
You are. You're so human. I love that. Well, you talked about this earlier, but I want to go back to it, which is you have a strong online presence. And you've got several videos, which are wonderful. I encourage you all to go learn more about what she does through her videos. And do you think going online, doing the videos, all of the posting that you do, the social media, do you think that over time has changed how you do your work, change you as a person, you as an artist?
I would like to say no, it hasn't necessarily. I think that social media and having to post online is more of a necessary evil. I miss the days where you don't have to be on a computer ever. Like I didn't get my first computer until my senior year of college. I had worked in the computer labs until then. So I went into the technological world like my mother, kicking and screaming. And I actually, when I was working in a law firm, I started doing the social media for her. And I took a workshop for that and realized I need to get on top of this now for my own artwork. I bought jennyschu.com right out of college. I've had emails with people who asked me to sell my domain name, like your artwork sucks. Please sell me your domain name. People, and that's the thing is the internet, people on the internet suck. They are terrible. So but again, part of what makes you human is just putting yourself out there too. So I hate doing the videos.
You're so good though. I'm amazed.
I did a lot of theater in high school and some in college, but I don't like being on screen. I don't like the sound of my voice being recorded, which is why a lot of my videos, I'm all about the time lapse now because I don't have to talk or anything. But it's a necessity, I think, these days with TikTok. Everybody's interested in how things are done, and that is really cool. So it's interesting that this happened 2 days ago at work. One of my coworkers was like, well, how do you get the threads on the loom? How do you do this? And I was like, I've got a video for that, because it's really hard to, that's why I've done the videos, is it's really hard to explain to people what weaving is, what the process is, and they look at you like you're crazy because it is. I mean, at the end of the day, why don't you just buy the fabric? But when you can show it, I think it gives it more of a depth. And I have a really great story from a little event that I did this summer where I had my beadwork for sale. There was a woman who was probably early 20s, and her father, who I would say was 50s maybe. And the normal response I get from people is, why is this so expensive? Because they don't understand how long beadwork takes. And I don't even pay myself what I make at Home Depot per hour. Like, I do it because I love it. So he was going, oh, that's really expensive, blah, blah, blah. And she says, do you know how long it takes her to make this? She's like, I cannot believe she's made so much of this, like all these pieces. She's like, these are amazing. She said, I watch all these videos on TikTok of people making things. And I guess there's a little song that like goes along with some TikTok crafters that you can post. It's like, it costs so much because it takes so effing long to make it. And it's a cute little ditty. You can find it on YouTube, but it's showing the process, and it is, there is this whole generation coming up that is learning to do things themselves again, that understands what it takes, and they want to know how it works. They want to know how to do it, and they're excited about it. And I think that that is one of the positives of the internet and videos for me, is that sharing what that is and what the process is and what it takes. Because like you said earlier, you don't, warping a loom is not like your favorite thing. And I have carried that attitude for way too long in my life, like, because I always heard how awful warping was. And I've tried to make really long warps to combat that. And I finally realized that's just something I picked up from other people. I love warping. I like the whole process of creating a piece, from winding my rayon to dye it, and then, the dyeing process, and then rewinding it and getting it, warping it, everything is part of me. And so my new rule is I just don't every once in a while I'll tie on to an old warp, but in general, I'm just creating something new. This piece is, it's its own thing, like from start to finish. So I don't.
Do you create while you warp? Do you ever do that? Like just kind of wing it while you're warping, or do you have it all planned out?
I have it planned out. The warping I have planned out, but I'm really, for double weave pickup, I'm only really warping two, 1, 2, 3, 4 is my threading. Although I might have a video up there. It might show multiple chunks of warp, because I stripe out pieces. So I'm doing the math to figure out how much of what I need is in each one. Is there a thing to which brings us less joy but we devote more time piece is the longest winded title, but I love it. It's all gray and black, except it's got these little pops of color throughout it to show that there is some joy in the internet and social media. So trying to figure that one out took a little bit longer, but yeah, I don't try to wing my weaving too much. My beadwork, I wing it a lot. That's a lot more of the play, I think.
Yeah, I guess winging it would be different, really difficult when you're doing double weave. There's so much pre-planning you have to do that.
Well, I'm just following a cartoon at the end of the day with the pickup. So, but I have a process. I know it's going to look like, and if I pick this up, then this will happen. But that's with practice.
Well, you chose the Pantone. You chose the 2018 Pantone Color of the Year for these pieces. And I chose this picture because I love purple. I think these are just beautiful. So where do you get your inspiration? That was one place. Where's another place you get your inspiration?
Everywhere. Like there's joy everywhere. So I get my inspiration everywhere. And that's with my internet presence, I love blogging. I'm not well spoken, like I'm not great at writing, but every piece I blog about, I talk about where I got my inspiration, or if I just picked up one of them, I got a post. I just bought a whole bunch of new beads, and I was excited, so I just started playing with color. But I'll get a new dress, and I'll need to make a bracelet to match the patterning in it. You name it, I can pull inspiration from about anywhere. I take a lot of photos. I'll just I love Pinterest. I'm a total Pinterest addict, and I've started to just every year start creating its own board, which what's fun for me is looking back on what the board looked like in like 2015, and how different, like, fashion moves so quickly. And I used to try to follow the Pantone colors of the year and the fashion forecast and stuff, and it got really exhausting. So if it were up to me, I'd probably make everything purple and green, Those are my two favorite colors. But instead it was kind of blacks and gunmetals lately. But sometimes I just get like really obsessed with the color that I have to use a lot until I've kind of flushed it through. I just went live the other night with my new website redo, and the background has this neon purple, and I'm obsessed with neon green right now, like really fluorescent neon green. I bought a hank of yarn just because I needed to have it at a yarn shop in Grand Rapids. And I don't know, sometimes I just get into, and 10 years ago, I was like, oh, neon green, that's so 80s. But they're back, so I'm excited about it.
Well, I've asked you where you get your inspiration. What about who? Who do you think has inspired you, been your source of creativity, supported you?
That's a very deep question. I would start with my parents because, like I said, my mom, very 2D. She could draw or paint about anything growing up, and she did do some quilting and stuff. Very creative mind. And then my father basically showed me I can build anything if I want to try to figure it out. So those are like my very good base building blocks to move forward with that. And they gave me a good baseline too because I grew up in Fenton, Michigan, which is right between Flint and Ann Arbor. And we went to the Flint Institute of Art growing up. We took a lot of art classes. So I took my first metals class in like the 5th grade. So yeah, I started soldering that early. I don't know if that's even allowed anymore, but I have an elementary schooler taking a metals class. But yeah, so that I had a really good base of like learning to create and, just kind of that play. Like there's so much stuff out there that you can play with materials wise. And beyond that, like I said, my first Weavers Guild, the Black Sheep Weavers, Pat Thompson has been part of my life since I was like 12, and Kim Emmert, who just passed away. Who else? I mean, there's a bunch of ladies from that era of my life, and then and that's the first time I saw Millie Danielson talk too, who's a member of the Ann Arbor Guild that I'm a member of now. And so moving on from there, Sherry Smith was really big point in my life because she was a professor. Like I said, she told me probably wasn't very good at art, but it wasn't about showing her that I could do anything. It was just, I had this deep respect for her honesty. Like when you go to art school, you got to be prepared to sit through 6-hour critiques of like your pieces being ripped apart. And it wasn't until my senior year, my first bangle that I created with my beadwork, which I'm really well known for now with the bangles. I did it over the summer. Like I'd had this idea, but I didn't know how long it would take. And I grabbed out this piece. Took me all summer to bead it, and I showed it to her at the beginning of the semester, my senior year. She's like, you got to keep up with the beads. Like this, you got it. Like she's like, I can see you moving forward with this. And beadwork isn't something they teach anywhere really in college courses, but they kept on showing up in my medals work, and sculpturally I was like dabbling with them. So that encouragement has always been there from her. So I kind of refer to her as like my fibers mom a lot too. And yeah, just she's there to tell you when you're getting it. And she's definitely there to tell you when she's like, I don't know what that crap is that you're putting up there. But what art is arbitrary too. Like that's something that one person loves, somebody else can hate. It's what you want to take from it. I was just talking to a customer yesterday who said he went to the Kalamazoo Art Museum. I love going to art museums and seeing what's out there. And he's like, they had this junk up here that blah, blah, blah. And I said, but was the point to maybe make you a little uncomfortable? Like, there's so many different levels of why people create artwork for consuming. How are they trying to, art's supposed to invoke something, whether or not it's an emotion or whether or not you relate to it. So I learned a lot of that in art school, and also I have a minor in art history, so I learned that end of it too.
Mhm.
So I kind of look at it from all sides, which is really fun. Like I can pick my own pieces apart, not just what bothers me about them, but like what somebody else might view it as.
Well, I have a question for you. You've just won $1 million. How would that change you as an artist or your artistic life?
Since you told me about this question, it's been rolling around in my head. Like, so I love my life right now. Like I mentioned, they were at Home Depot, and I love it. So I wouldn't quit my day job, which is like what I think most people would say. And that is part of my creative process right now too, with my notes and sketching and everything. And it keeps me on a schedule. So what I would do is I would buy a bigger house. I'd like a bigger studio space. I have one room, which I think is supposed to be the master bedroom in this house, but that's supposed to be my studio, but everything is kind of dribbled all over the place. They've got shelves of books. I'd like it all to be in one spot, like have a computer that, I'd buy a bigger house with a bigger or addition to a studio space. I've thought about a second building, but really I like to just get up in the morning and sometimes just in my robe work in the studio. So it would have to be in the house or adjacent, attached somehow. And then my now fiance, he's into pinball. And so I'd like a bigger space so that he could have some pinball machines too, and a bigger wood shop. I don't know. But I think I would just kind of lob it into, I wouldn't buy $1 million house, something reasonable, and save the rest for the taxes and retirement.
There you go.
$1 million isn't that much these days.
You mentioned Convergence. That's going to be this summer, and you'll be teaching there. We'll see you all there. What's next for you? What's coming up with you in your artistic world?
The art world, I've only got 3 things on the calendar. Convergence, the Midwest Weavers Conference in 2023. I'm teaching 2 beading classes there. That's, I believe, in Des Moines. Yeah. And then, the third one was this. So
Yay.
I really, as far as teaching and whatnot, when people ask me, we figure out what works, and I kind of just roll with it. Because I have a day job, I'm not trying to get a whole bunch of, gigs all the time. So I like it if somebody's interested in my work or interested in having me talk, I'm willing to do so. And I really love doing that, but I'm flexible. So things will pop on and off of my calendar all the time. And I've done some Zoom workshops and teaching, and I love these Zoom talks too. Some of the talks I've been able to do demos with the double weave pickup on my loom, which is really cool. But they're very short term. But I do have a proposal written. I wrote it probably 5 years ago or more, 7 years, 10. The word pieces have a proposal for at some point when I have enough of them, I'd like to do a larger exhibit with all of them together in one room. But some of them take about 2 years to finish, so they kind of come out as needed.
Well, I look forward to hearing about your one-woman show.
Yeah.
I want to see that. We want to put that in spin on dipod.
Yeah.
Well, we have lots of questions from the audience, so let's take some of those if that's okay. Betsy, is it Blosser? Sorry, Betsy, if I'm pronouncing it wrong. She's a sister alum at Michigan. She's curious about which dorm had a loom. She thought that was amazing.
Which what?
Which dorm had a loom at Michigan?
Oh, Alice Lloyd had a loom in the basement in their art room at one point.
Okay, and then Sarah Third Fire. Could you describe how you knit your thrums?
Yeah, so when I take my thrums off of the loom, they're all tied up in little knots that are strung out. I'm looking around to see if I have any laying over around here, but I don't. So I just untie the knot and they're sort of in a little bundle, and I just tie each individual one to each other because I like small busy work. And then I roll it onto a bobbin of some sort, and then I knit them with whatever. I like them open and stretchy, so I tend to knit them with size 2 needles probably, because my rayon that I weave with is like thread almost. It's very, very tiny.
Well, Phyllis was wondering, do you always do words with your double weave?
Well, the one that's on the loom is just social media images, so it's not always words, but that is where I've kind of landed with my double weave work. I love the way like one or two words can really invoke a lot of different emotion. One of the reasons I want to do a big exhibit with all the word pieces is just to sit in and listen to people talking about the pieces, because whenever I have a word piece up, I know what it means to me, but I don't think it's important that everybody knows what it means to me. I think whatever you draw from it, from your own experience as a human being, is really important. And everybody has different things that certain words mean to them. So yeah, I really like using words because, like I said, with my blogging, I'm not great at, writing a whole bunch, but I can take one word and make it like, boom, do something, so.
Laurel Schwartz, I was wondering about the piece where the leaves are attached to a picture frame. How do you attach them to the frame?
The back of the frame, I think I used a staple gun and just pulled them out. So I put the staple gun, a couple staples where I needed it to attach, and then pulled them out a little bit with a flathead screwdriver so that I could, just stitch thread around the back of it. So they're suspended with those staples, but you could do it. I could talk all day about different ways you could do that.
Or Mary Holm wants to know, she wants you to talk about that piece behind you on the cork board. She wants to know, is that going to be a weaving eventually? Yeah.
On the left, that's actually a piece from college. That's an early double weave piece that I just thought looked good next to the leaves that I'm working on right now. So it's fine. It's finished. I'm not going back into it, but it's from a photograph of some plants from the Mathai Botanical Gardens in Ann Arbor that went back when I was really developing a lot of my double weave. I was utilizing plant leaves. Leaves are my thing.
Well, Rondi Schmidt and Michaela McIntosh both said they love warping. So they agree with you on that one. And Sarah Hall wants to know, what is your favorite beading thread size / type for seed beads and delicas?
Yep. Delicas are what I use in my bangles. So I buy the big spools of Nymo. And for delicas, I use size D, as in dog. For the size 15 beads, which is the really tiny ones, I use size 0. But I use it off of the big spools when you're beading with Nymo, because they're heavier duty than the little tiny Nymo bobbins. And I was told by another beader, by Hyde Peterson, at a workshop once, that the big spool, they're meant to go on a machine for machine stitching. So the big spools are the bottom thread and they make it heavier, and the top spool is the bobbin thread that goes on a machine, and they make it a little lighter for the top stitching. So when you're buying the Nymo beading thread, I stick with these and then I wind it off and do their own bobbins if I need to travel with them.
Linda Erickson wants to know, do you use thread or wire? So it sounds like you use that thread. Do you use wire?
Nope. I don't like working with wire.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people do. Wire and fishing line or anything of that springy like that, I can't stand.
Kathy wants to know, for the double weave, what yarns do you usually use? And she said you are wonderfully creative.
Oh, thank you. I use a really thin rayon. I started using it in college because it was like the free stuff that was hanging around the art room. And then when they were emptying out a bunch of stuff at U of M, nobody could use this rayon because it was so thin it would snap. And I got all of it. So I'm still using that rayon that I used back in since 2002. So it is really thin. And once I run out of it, I'm not, it comes in a light blue and a light green, but I just over dye it because it takes up the Proscian dyes really well. When I run out of that, I like it. I like thin, detailed, anything, the smaller, the better. So I'll just stick with, whatever I can get that's tiny, but I really like weaving with that rayon. It has a nice sheen to it too.
Now, do you use a beading loom?
No, I know how to. That's actually, somebody just told me their daughter got one for Christmas, and I was like, that's the beginning. That's the beginning of all this. So I got a beading loom in the 4th grade when I started beading, and as I said, it's a gateway drug to beads. So I couldn't figure out how to get the thing off the loom without the warp getting like what to do with the warp at first. I didn't understand the instructions, so that's when I started learning the bead peyote stitch, which is off loom techniques. And I just don't like carrying a loom around a lot, and I travel a lot with my beads, so it's kind of weird and awkward. And I like stitching one bead at a time, whereas the loom you do one row at a time. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I know how to do it, but it's not as conducive to my OCD.
Well, Mary Holm also wants to know, what kind of loom do you have now? And if you won that $1 million, what additional loom would you get for your studio?
Ooh, I didn't think about that. So I have a Maycomber loom that can take up to 10 harnesses, but it has 6 on it right now. And I call it my adult loom because it's what I wove on in college. And I love it. It's just a nice sturdy loom. It's what I always wanted. And a friend was actually selling the one I have now for really cheap. So she had cannibalized some of the parts for her bigger one, and it's not missing anything that I need for right now. It's got a double back beam, but I don't need to use that at this point. I might eventually, if I had $1 million, I might go with a computerized like AVL. However, I worked on a Dobby loom in college briefly, and I hated it. Like I didn't like, again, with the technology stuff, I didn't like having to have the computer talk to the loom and that sort of thing. And it's just another level of frustration where I don't mind hand manipulating my warp on a regular loom. So I don't know if I'll ever, they look so cool when I'm at conversions. I'm like, oh, you can do a lot with it, but do I need that? I probably in my lifetime, I don't know that I will. But it's an attraction, but I'm just worried that it would be a fun toy and then I'd get over it and just go back to what I know I like.
Yeah, I understand that. Well, you had talked about doing Zoom classes. Are you doing Zoom classes now in the future?
When people ask me to, yeah.
Okay,
So,
somebody was asking, they didn't see any Zoom classes on your website. So do you have anything scheduled?
I don't schedule anything. No.
Okay.
One of the things that I don't like to do is try to reel people into a class. It's my probably least favorite thing in the entire world, setting up a class and then having to promote it and get people to sign up. So when I do Zoom classes or programs, it's because somebody has asked me to do it and
Mhm.
they already have a group that's interested. So
Okay.
if you and 2 or 3 or 10 friends wanted to get together, just talk to me and we'd set a date and we'd do a Zoom class. But usually do it through guilds and that sort of thing.
Well, we put your website in the chat, but also just a reminder that it is jennyschu.net. Now, do you have .com also?
Yep, I have
Okay.
.com also.
They put that, somebody had
.com.
commented that they thought you had both. So it's jennyschu.net or jennyschu.com.
All goes to the same thing.
Well, thank you so much for being on here today. It's been great.
Me.
I hope you enjoyed yourself. I appreciate you sharing about your work and your creativity and your history and everything. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, it has been. I love talking about it. So
Good. And I encourage you all to go to her website, check out her blog, her Instagram. She says she doesn't like it, but she does a great job at it. You'll see all kinds of information. Like I said, she has wonderful videos. So check those out. Again, it's jennyschu.net or jennyschu.com. Again, I want to thank our sponsors, the Michigan League of Handweavers. Now, registration is now open for their summer workshops that we were talking about earlier today. And again, go to mlhguild.org and you can see all the information about the workshops. You can sign up and see all the wonderful things. This is a busy, busy guild. Check out all the things that they're involved in. And thank you so much. They've been very, very wonderful in supporting Textiles and Tea. Michigan, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. If you are interested in having a sponsorship, your guild, your business, please go to our website. It's weavespindye.org. You can get more information there about a sponsorship for Textiles and Tea. We are gearing up for our next year. We are getting more speakers, so we have plenty of slots open and available. So jump in there and grab one of those spots. Textiles and Tea is also supported by the generous donations to the Fiber Trust. If you would like to see more programming like this, please support HTA by becoming a member or donating, and you can do all of that at weavespindye.org. Speaking about more programming, we've got a wonderful new program coming up this month. On the 29th, it's a Saturday, we have the Guild Development Retreat. If your guild is interested on finding new ways to expand either in size or the activities that you do, the quality of your guild, check it out and join us for that online retreat. It's called the Guild Development Retreat. And again, you can see it at weavespindye.org. If you missed some today, you want to watch it again, you want to share it with a friend, remember you can watch it on Facebook. You don't have to have an account. I know some people don't want to have an account. You can just watch it. You go straight to HGA Facebook and you can see it. Or you can get it, watch it on YouTube. And I encourage you to subscribe. We are so close to having 1,000 subscriptions. And when we do, HGA will start making money off of it. And that means more programming that we can do and provide for you. Thank you all so much for being here today. We appreciate you joining us. Next week, we have Murray Gibson, who's going to be our guest. He's a tapestry weaver. You might want to check him out. So we look forward to seeing you next week. And again, happy tea.